Are you an artist that's about to start a paint and sip company, but you're sort of confused on how to design your sample painting for your events? Well, in this video, I'm going to share with you the 4 lessons I've learned over the past 10 years on how to create the perfect sample painting for your paint and sip events. If that's something you're interested in, stick around. Hi everybody, this is JJ Long from JJArtworks, and welcome to our official YouTube channel where we help artists create profitable paint party businesses. Thank you so much for being here. We truly appreciate the love and support. So the question today comes from Friendly Friend Official, and just a quick shout out to them. Thank you so much for all your questions. Keep them coming because it gives us more content to create for you guys. And their question is, how do you design your sample paintings for your paint and sip events? And this is a very, very interesting topic, and it's something I actually never really thought about. But the more I thought about how to answer this question, I realized there is a system and there sort of is a formula on how to create the perfect sample painting. So I want to share with you guys the 4 lessons I've learned over the past 10 years on how to create a sample painting. And I actually do have samples to share with you guys today, so it'll be a little more visually appealing to you guys. So the first question, or the first lesson I learned, is creating sample paintings without the customer in mind. So, and I'm going to share with you a couple of different sample paintings I have here today. So these are sample paintings that I actually created without the customer in mind. And it's a very important lesson I learned. So the first thing I would say before you start your sample paintings is that I would say 90% of the sample paintings that customers like are landscapes. So I'd probably stay away from still lifes in the beginning, maybe cityscapes in the beginning. If you're just starting out and you're starting to create your first 5 sample paintings, I'd probably keep them all landscape paintings. I think that's your best option. And people just like something nice that they can hang on their wall. It looks good in the bathroom, maybe the kitchen, maybe in the master bedroom, who knows. But landscapes, generally speaking, are a solid option to go with. So when I first started my sample paintings in the beginning, and these are 2 sample paintings that I started within the first 6 months of my journey building a paint and sip company, I just wanted to make something that looked pretty. So when I was living in the Boston area, I created a Cape Cod themed painting, which is what this is. And I just wanted a really nice landscape, and I wanted a lighthouse in the background. Just get a point here. I wanted a lighthouse in the background, and then I was thinking of like a winding fence that was kind of rustic and falling over with the dunes and, stars in the sky, and it looked really pretty. And what I realized very early on from teaching this painting is that this is a very difficult painting to teach. And although I was booking regularly because people like this painting, this was definitely a 2-hour painting. There was no breaks involved. This was a very labor-intensive painting, mainly because the blending right here in the sky was a little difficult for people to do. And there was a lot of straight lines when it came to the fence. So a lot of people have difficulty painting straight lines. You'll find out as you start teaching paint parties. And there was just some complex colors going around. So this painting took a lot longer for people to do than I would have liked. Same thing with this painting. I call this one Dockside Doggy. And I just wanted to paint something with a pet in it because I know a lot of people like pets. Pets sell really good. And the background layers, and this is just a quick note about when you do create your paintings. The background comes first, and this is the system I use. You want to do your background layers first. So up here, I'd start off in the sky. We would do like a light pink that fades to a purple, and then we'd put some yellow, on top of the light pink, let that dry. Go here, do the pink in the water with some reflections in the water, let that dry. And then we'd finish with the dock with some reeds in the water. And then we'd finish with the dog. And with this painting, the dog was the most difficult thing to teach in the painting. And especially at the very end of the painting, if you save this for the last minute, people are usually drunk. So you're saving the hardest part of the painting for last when people don't have the best motor skills. And this was a very difficult thing for people to paint. Same thing with the duck, because again, we got straight lines and we're going to a vanishing point out here. And, a lot of the times we're teaching people to paint when they've never painted before. So, when you start giving them challenging compositions, it's really, really difficult to do. So lesson one was I created beautiful paintings, but I didn't have the customer in mind. You always have to keep the customer in mind before you start a painting. And you always want to start off with the background layers first, and then move to, middle ground, foreground layers after that. So that was that. The second lesson I learned is I made sample paintings that were too easy, because I learned my lesson from creating difficult paintings. And this is a jellyfish painting, super easy to paint. This is a rocket ship painting, super easy to paint. And what I learned from these paintings was that people finish them too fast. And if people are paying you, a good rate for a 2-hour class and you finish your paintings in an hour, they're kind of like, so what am I paying for? There wasn't a lot of teaching instruction. It wasn't a very challenging painting. And, if they finish in an hour, they're going to just question whether it was a good event or not. They're expecting a high quality professional event. So with this painting, super easy. It was basically dark blue into light blue for the background. Again, we started off with the background. And then we just did a, semicircle for the jellyfish with a couple of tentacles coming off of it. And I didn't even make the tentacles very detailed. You can't even really see the cups on the tentacles. They're just really wavy lines with some, what are these called, barnacles or whatever, with some algae, and then a couple of bubbles. And like I said, this painting went super fast, and they were just like, it was fun, but what are we going to do in the next hour? So they just drink and socialize. So this is actually, when it comes to super easy paintings, I reserve these for kids' parties, because the kids don't have a long attention span. Same thing with the rocket ship painting. Ooh, that's better. There's not so much glare. With the rocket ship painting, basically the whole background was black. Then you just added some white dots for the stars in the sky, a quick moon, some of these curly Q yellow things. And then the rocket ship is basically like a gray rectangle with some blue structures to it for the wings and back here, and then some red and yellow for the fire. This would take like an hour and 15 minutes. And again, we started just keeping these for kids' parties. So then I went from, something difficult to something too easy. So that's lesson number 2. Don't create something too easy unless you have kids' parties in mind for that, because adults will get bored very fast. The next sample paintings I did, these were great compositions, and I really liked them a lot, but they were too difficult to paint. So I had the customer in mind, and then I learned more lessons about what are difficult things to paint. So this was an Aruba painting. I'm not sure where in Aruba, but the client asked me to create an Aruba themed painting. So it was like a private event, and they wanted something very specific. So I came up with this Aruba themed painting. And what I didn't realize, I did the background layers first. I did light blue to dark blue with some clouds. I did the Caribbean water with some sand, painted a purple shadow down here. And what I didn't realize was that this tree, it's called a divvy tree. This tree is super intricate and super hard to paint. And I had no idea. This is like too many branches for people to do. And I had different shading. I had like some shadow color down here, and then I had some highlights here, and their brain just exploded. And the last thing in the painting was this Adirondack chair. And again, just too many lines. So a lot of the times what happens with this painting is people are like, do we have to do the Adirondack chair? Is that something that we have to do? And I always make it optional. And again, this painting would take a full 2 hours, and sometimes we'd go over on time. And just as a quick rule of thumb, you never really want to go over in time at a paint party, especially if it's a corporate event, because they're on a schedule and they have to go back to the next meeting after the event. So we can get into more of that later. Again, this was another painting where a company hired me. This was a corporate event that I taught, and it was in the seaport of Boston. And they hired me to do like a wharf theme painting. So I got like this little post here with some chain, and then I got the cityscape in the background. I was like, oh, this is a great composition. I think it should be fairly easy. When it comes to buildings, people get, their brain shuts off. But when it comes to architecture, it's very difficult for people to paint, especially beginner painters. And again, there's a lot of straight lines here going on. For something like this, I might recommend that you do a template or a stencil on each person's canvas, where you kind of have the buildings, the outline of the buildings pre-drawn on the canvas. I've never done that because I've done enough paintings in my life where I can guide someone through this freehanding it. And I kind of like freehanding it so people can create their own buildings, maybe make Taj Mahal or something. You know, people just come up with different concepts when you give them more creativity. But when you do a stencil of buildings, they're kind of more constricted with their creativity. So it's up to you what you want to do. But again, the lesson I learned here was that it was great composition. I had the customer in mind, especially because, you know, the client hired me to do something custom, but too many straight lines and it just took too long. And I think this was supposed to be an hour-long painting. We went over on time that day. Not a good thing. So that's that. And then the fourth lesson I learned, I kind of hit the money spot. And I believe that this is the perfect sample painting. And the reason why I say that is the background, again, like I said, do the background layers first and let that dry. Super easy background. It's just light blue blending into like a pinkish purple. And I get like a little bit of pinkish purple here. Super easy to paint. This snow down here, really easy to paint. This was just like a lightish blue with some purple shadows. Super easy to paint. We let that dry. Then the middle ground was just like some green trees. Let that dry. And then the thing in the foreground was this pine tree, and that's basically just black paint with some white for the snow. And then I just bedazzled the whole entire painting with a lot of white dots sort of coming down in the painting. And every winter we book with this painting. This is sort of like our staple winter themed sample painting. So this was the winter. It was a very easy landscape. It was something that was somewhat challenging, but not too challenging. It took like maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours to do. And anytime you can do a sample painting where you have a little bit of wiggle room with time, that's a pretty good painting. Like I said, you don't want people to be painting for a full 2 hours and they don't have time to take a sip from their drink or grab a bite to eat or socialize. You don't want to be barking orders at them, at the whole entire paint party. You want people to be relaxed and be able to unwind, socialize, have time, reach for a drink, maybe stand up and, look at everyone's paintings. So anytime you can kind of build in wiggle room into a painting, meaning giving them a little bit more time to create the painting and not rushing toward the end of the class, that is a good sample painting. The only thing I would change with this sample painting here is that it's winter themed. So basically, throughout the rest of the year, spring, summer, and fall, people aren't really hiring us to do this winter themed sample painting. So I might go for something more maybe springy or fall-y, or just like a generic landscape painting should do. So thank you so much for tuning in. I know this is kind of a long-winded YouTube video, but I really, really wanted to share with you the lessons I've learned over the past 10 years. And I think that if you can incorporate some of that into your teachings as well, that would really do you well. So thank you again so much for tuning in. If this is your first time here, please subscribe to our channel. We come up with weekly videos. Also, if you are an artist looking to see what kind of supplies we use, I actually have a bunch of links in the description below as to what type of brushes we use, what type of easels we recommend, what kind of paints and canvases we use and all that. So definitely check that out. And if you are someone that's starting your paint and sip journey, or you're already an established paint and sip company, but you're looking to level up your game, I do offer one-on-one coaching. So definitely click on the link in the description below. It'll take you to our website and you can reach out and we can talk there. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you again to Friendly Friend Official for this question. Keep the questions coming, and I will talk to you all in another video. Have a great one. Bye-bye.